you've interviewed a lot of guests in your work, but someone that you haven't interviewed is Benjamin Netanyahu, and I wanted to know, like, what do you think would be the first question you'd ask him if you had him on?
Wow, that is a very hard question. That is a very hard question. It's not even something I've ever thought about. I don't know what I would ask Benjamin Netanyahu, to be honest.
Mm,
You're talking about interviewing a war criminal, right? Somebody that's indicted by the ICC.
yeah,
Um, I guess there are so many questions, but there was also no questions. I don't know. I don't know if I want to be in that position, to be honest. I don't even know if that's something I want to be in. Is that something that you've thought about? Like hypothetically, if he came on A to the, do you have a first question that you would ask him?
I think my
Do
first
you
question
do you
would
condemn
be.
Hamas?
That would be Ali's first question. My first question would
Saeed,
be with,
Ali,
yeah,
Ali the professor.
Ali the professor. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. My first question would be, when did you lose your humanity? I think
Mm.
that would be, I think that one would be mine.
Did you,
Definitely.
this reminds me, did you guys see when he went on the Nelk Boys podcast?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I don't think there's
Talking about
much.
Burger King.
That's your worst take, apparently.
Yeah, that was his worst take. Burger King. It's ridiculous.
Listen, those guys are jokes. They're jokesters. They're not real interviewers. Versus what you've
I'm not
done with
comparing
Middle.
you guys to the Nelk Boys, FYI. I'm
Yes.
just
Cheers to that.
But what you've done with Middle East, I am Muhammad, is incredible and so inspiring. And in a way, I believe that what you've done was able to make a change in the Palestinian conflict in the world. I mean, the way I see it is that media has changed the way all of us perceive what's going on in the conflict and the genocide, and a lot of people's eyes have been open because of Middle East Eye and your outlet at Real Talk, and you've been able to bring in so many experts and incredible, thought leaders and celebrities to talk about this difficult topic and at risk to their own, you know,
you know,
money or safety even, and you've had them open up, and because of that, that's changed the narrative and it's changed how everyone's thinking about it. And now we look at here in the U.S., the majority of all people are against the Zionist occupation, and the world's changed in such a dramatic way. And um, yeah, I think your work is like, you might not see it that way, but it's
no.
definitely a part of what you do. I've heard in no other land they have a saying that it's not like one raindrop is not going to fill a bucket, but a thousand
Yeah,
raindrops definitely do fill a bucket and is able to make a change. And
sure. Yeah,
um,
that I would agree with. That I would 100% agree with. First of all, thank you. I mean, I don't even know if that's a compliment. That's more than a compliment. I don't know if I would agree with it necessarily about changing people's minds and all of that. I think, through the show and through the work that we do, you kind of just strive to kind of further the conversation and just shine a spotlight on things that you believe are necessary. But I would definitely agree with you in the sense of how Middle East Eye has definitely contributed to changing the conversation. I think we have a team of such principled and such hardworking journalists that have really punched way above their weights. I think MEE has become, just over the past few years, have become such a valuable brand in the digital media sphere that everybody's kind of talking about. Like people now, especially like I think not just in London, I think also I've heard so many stories from colleagues in the US that say the same thing, but like people see the MEE logo, they see the MEE mic, and then they're just like, oh, Middle East Eye, and then they'll want to come talk to you. And I think that is the achievement of an incredible team of hard workers, principled, and ones that really want to push the conversation as far as they can.
What was your agreement with Middle East Eye about doing real talk? Did they have you specifically like focus on the Palestinian uh, conflict, or how did that go about?
No, no. One sec. Let me pull out my contract, Adi. Give me a minute. Um, what is your agreement with Middle East Side? No, I think the genocide was the biggest conversation in the world. It was the biggest news event. It was the biggest tragedy, however you want to term it.
Hmm.
I think it would have been,
Right.
completely tone deaf to look at the genocide, look how many people are being killed, look at what's happening in traditional and Western media and other outlets, and just be like, you know what, like can I interview like a singer who has nothing to do with the genocide or whatever? Not that there's anything wrong with interviewing singers, but what I'm trying to say is that it would have been very tone deaf to kind of shift away instead of actually delve right into it.
Wow, and that takes like some honesty and bravery and critical thinking. I mean, like I look at other colleagues and people that do similar interviews in CNN or other kind of outlets, and it just seems they're so like, is it that they're like stupid, or do they not know about the genocide, or are they too cowardly to talk about it, or
Look,
it's
I I
so
I
weird.
wouldn't label anyone anything. I wouldn't call
Sorry.
anybody a coward or stupid, but it is a conversation has been that we've been kind of having, at least amongst ourselves or with colleagues behind closed doors and stuff. There's been a lot of frustration in these newsrooms, and I think a lot of brilliant journalists that work in legacy media and traditional media outlets have been speaking out, and I think it's much more than just journalists being cowardly. I think there's also stories that are being shot down. I think it's journalists that are being reassigned to different divisions. I think journalists that have resigned, others that have been, dealing in the same way as like whistleblowers and talking to the media kind of undercover, but also telling them what's been happening and what kind of hurdles that they've been facing inside of these newsrooms. So I think it's a lot bigger than just journalists being cowardly, to be honest with you.
Hmm. I mean, the way I see it, we're a lot more than them. Like all of us that are awakened and pro Palestine are like the majority, 99% of the population, and there's only a small sliver of people that are trying to maintain the status quo. And I don't understand how we haven't been able to push to the other side just yet and help
No, I
the
think
Palestinians out.
okay. Well, the helplessness, yes, that's obviously something that so many are struggling with, and that's I think it's not just in the media industry, it's across the board. I think as far as helplessness goes, I think there are so many people, so many conversations you're having where people feel helpless and feel like whatever it is that they're doing isn't actually doing any change on the ground in terms of stopping the killing or in terms of having a particular resolution to the genocide, having it stop.
Right.
That I understand. I would say though that because of social media, because of the efforts of a lot of alternative media outlets, the conversation has shifted. We are no longer in the same place we were a couple years back, and I think that is the result of, first and foremost, the reporting of the brave Palestinian journalists on the ground in Gaza that
Hmm.
have been documenting their own killing, their own genocide against them, their families, and their own people. I don't think we would be anywhere without the work of these journalists. And a lot of them have sacrificed so much, not least their lives, in order to get the story out. So there's that aspect, and that is not something that I look at or any of us should look at lightly. And then there is the work of people on social media who have done a great job in terms of pushing the conversation, in terms of pushing the videos that you saw, in terms
Right.
we've all seen. And then there's the work of independent media and alternative media outlets. And I think that have also, the pressure from all of that kind of together has in a way pushed the, I don't know, has pushed the I guess the framing that has been coming out of certain, not all, but certain legacy media outlets or traditional media outlets in terms of how they report, because there's just the pressure was just way too high.
I mean, yes, I want to agree on the point that there is definitely a shift of the narrative from how it used to look like to now. There's definitely more positive image on for the Arab side. Like there are more people now supporting Palestinians, and even as Arabs in general, I think there's a better image presented of us in the Western world. And we've also, if you like, recent polls are also stating that the support for Palestinians is steadily increasing in the US. I think the last one that we saw was like it rose from 42% to like 53%. Or sorry, support for Israel went down from 53% to 42%. But we can check the
I
numbers
mean,
later.
the discrepancy is definitely between the political class and the people, especially younger people. I think the polls have been showing, even in the U.S. where Ali is, whether it comes to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, there is quite a big, especially on the Democrat side, there is quite a big disconnect between where the Democratic Party establishment is, or where the legislators are, let's say,
Hmm.
the political class, and where the voters are, especially the younger you go.
Yeah.
And so that is a whole other conversation about whether the political class is a real representation of the people when it comes to these political viewpoints. And then obviously you have the influence of APAC, and it's like a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
But
of course.
there is definitely a shift in people's viewpoints. It might not have fully reached the political class, but it's definitely with a lot of voters, is what I'm trying
Could
to say.
we say that maybe the victory for Mamdani is like a positive change for that side, and also with the two Lebanese mayors in Michigan, uh, is that like a positive change towards that side for that Arabic narrative? Is that like a symptom of the change in the political side?
Well, I don't know if it's a victory for the Arab narrative. Well, because Mamdani isn't an Arab, right? So I
Yeah,
don't know if you would
exactly.
view it that way. But look, I think the pro-Gaza stance or the Gaza solidarity stance has played a role. I think Mamdani's viewpoints on Gaza, the fact that he was quite clear where he stood in terms of the genocide, and the stuff that he said about how he would arrest Netanyahu if he had come to New York while he's mayor. And I think all the previous tweets about his previous stances on the Palestinian issue, I think that played a role. But if anything, I think Mamdani wasn't the one trying to make his campaign about Gaza. It was actually Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams and the rest of the establishment that were going against him. They were the ones who were trying to make, especially Andrew Cuomo. He was the one trying to make this a referendum on Israel. Mamdani, if you remember from his speeches and his campaign, he was saying that he wants to be the mayor for New York, and therefore he believes that he needs to make this about New York. And so it was actually the other side that was trying to make this as like, look at this guy. He doesn't, they were trying to make him look, trying to paint him as an anti-Semite, trying to paint him with various Islamophobic brushes to say that this guy is a threat to Jewish people in America, to Jewish New Yorkers. That Andrew Cuomo going in that podcast and laughing about these 9/11 jokes, and I'm sure you've seen the explosion of
Hmm.
Islamophobia that has come online. But I think that Mamdani's win proves that at the end of the day, he really galvanized a big portion. I think he got 51% of the vote, if maybe around that. A big
Yeah.
portion of the voter class who didn't buy into that narrative, didn't buy into that messaging, and led an authentic kind of campaign that talked about affordability, that talked about the free buses, everything that he was listing, and in a way also not only defeated Andrew Cuomo, but he defeated the billionaires that have fed the media campaign against Mamdani. The Bill Ackmans, the Rupert Murdochs. So I think it's important in that sense. So I wouldn't tie it to the Arab image per se. I would definitely tie it to the left that this is a victory for
Yeah.
the left in America, right? Because firstly, because he's a socialist, and the fact
True.
that they even skipped that word in the U.S., like they're going straight to communist now. They don't even. They're like, well, how can we? Like he said, they're like socialist. He already says he's a socialist, so let's use communist to kind of try to, scare people away from it.
There's no playing the central at any point. There's just just extremes at this in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's because he this is what he calls himself. He calls himself a democratic Muslim socialist. So that there's you can't what are you going to do? Hit somebody with something that he already calls himself? So they just immediately went to communist. But it is interesting that socialist is no longer, at least in New York's case, a scary word in American politics, because clearly people didn't seem to mind, those that voted for him at least. But yeah, like it's an incredible win. It's an incredible win for the left, and he's gonna have a very brief honeymoon, if any, because like I said, it's not like the Islamophobia has calmed down, or it's only going to increase from here, and one is you're gonna be apprehensive seeing what's to come. But I think what a lot of people have been speaking about is that they really hope that this campaign, that this win, will have ripple effects, not just in other electoral areas in the United States, but also across different Western countries. And we're going to see if that happens.
I'm so tired of the Islamophobia. I'm so tired about hearing people talk negatively about Arabs or about Muslims, or saying that we're less than, saying that we're evil, or and that's very far from the truth. And I don't understand how that's acceptable even nowadays. You wouldn't be allowed to do that for any other ethnicity or religion, and I don't understand how it's even acceptable at all for a mayoral candidate to like espouse such hatred towards Arabs and Muslims. We are so intelligent, we're so kind, we have a beautiful history of science and education, and we've influenced the world in such a beautiful way.
But you don't even need to say that, Ali. I don't even think we're in a, this is like, it takes us back to like 2000, the aftermath of 2001, where people were just quick, Muslims, were quick to come out and be like, no, Islam is a religion of peace. Like, we're not actually like these crazy guys on TV. I don't think you need to be saying that. I think you just draw the line where it's like Islamophobia is wrong, period. Just like you would say anti-Semitism is wrong, period. And you would say that against, any kind of xenophobia or any kind of anti-racial hatred. I don't think it has to be justified. I don't think, and I'm not calling you out for it, Ali, at all. I'm just speaking my thoughts here. I don't think we need to be as, let me say here, as Muslims, we need to be in a position where we're like, oh, no, let me show you how great our culture is. Let me show you how great our food is. Let me show you these great jokes that, these Lebanese memes. Have you seen Lebanese memes? Let me show you some Lebanese memes. I don't think we need to do that.
I agree with you. We don't have to play on the defensive anymore, because it doesn't make sense. Like, we've tried being defensive about our culture and trying to appease the West for so long, and it hasn't really served us at any point. And maybe going on the offense a bit would kind of actually be a better option for the Muslims at this point.
Wait, that's a loaded term too. What do you mean go on the offense? What?
I'm not saying any physical war or anything like that. Let's calm down. We've had enough of that,
Man took my word and ran with it. He was like, "Yes, we got to go on offense." Hold on a bit, Saeed. Hold on a bit.
What do you mean, Saeed?
It's a good question. I don't know how exactly we could go on the offense. I mean, setting boundaries on Islamophobia is technically, I would say, a type of offense, if anything, because you're telling your aggressors to just like back off. You're not necessarily being defensive by saying no, we're nice. You should like us. It's telling people like don't assault us, don't attack us. Yeah. It's not fair.
But have you seen? I think Mamdani has done something similar to what you're saying is that, have you seen his speech on Islamophobia that he had
Hmm.
just before the election like culminated?
No,
Um,
sure. Yeah.
it was basically, it was after the whole campaign against him, and he had a whole speech talking about the serious ramifications of Islamophobia, and then he was speaking about how, his aunt was, after 9/11, was afraid to be seen out in public, and he just listed all of these things that I think a lot of us who have grown up in the West, especially North
Yeah.
America, because I grew up in Canada, but like a lot of the things that we can relate to
Yeah.
in the way that we have kind of lived under the shadow of post 9/11, and the wars on Afghanistan, wars on Iraq, just living under the shadow of those years and what it meant to be a Muslim during that time. And I think it was a very effective way of his messaging. I think he, if anything, he leaned into it, and he talked about how this seriously affects people and affects Muslims in a
Hmm.
negative
Right.
manner, instead of kind of trying to be a centrist around it, or just be like, okay, Islamophobia is bad, but this is also bad, and that's also like, he leaned into it, and had a full speech, and I think it was outside, if I'm not mistaken, it was outside a mosque, and he had a whole bunch of people from the community around him. So I think it was a very momentous speech, and I think it will be one of those speeches that will be remembered years from now when people look back at his campaign.
I hope so. Yeah. Ali.
Yeah, I hope that will help. And what do you think also in the future people are going to think about the Gaza genocide like 20 years from now? What will people think about this whole situation?
Uh, that is a very tough question to answer. I think the Gaza genocide is, it's the moral issue of our time. I think so many people have said that, and it is something to really grapple with. The moral issue of our time. Maybe, that quote, the Omar al-Akkad quote that everybody uses now, it's one day everybody will have been against this. I think there will be a point years from now where people will look back and say, how did it go for this long without anyone or any institution or any kind of force in the world that was able to put a stop to this, a meaningful stop to this, for that long of a period of time, where people who are living in what has been called, and what still is, the largest open air prison in the world, and have been killed on a regular basis, have endured genocide for this long, and how has nobody been able to put a stop to it, despite the fact that it was all over our social media, despite the fact that the Palestinians haven't stopped speaking out about it. They were speaking out day and night, talking about what they were living, talking about what they were enduring, and the fact that people we're trying to make a change, whether it's all these different human rights groups that have called it a genocide, including Israeli human rights groups like B'Tselem, and yet nothing really moved until it was like a political I guess the political ceasefire that we saw. But again, Israel has violated that ceasefire numerous times since it was signed. So uh, I think that would be the thing that people look back on, is that how did we, as just we as the world, kind of just watch this happen. And I think the other thing is that I think more and more horrifying stories will come out. I think the death toll will be a lot higher than it is, just because there are so many unaccounted for,
Yeah.
in terms of those who were killed in Gaza, in terms of, you've had entire families that were just kind of deleted and just completely taken off the civil registry because they were killed
Right.
altogether. So like there's just so much horrific devastation. There's so much horrific killing. I think there will be more and more stories that come out that really, really horrify us.
And going on this point, like that, no one was actually able to, step in and protect the Palestinian people. Is
Mm.
this is this like exposing international organizations, especially like organizations such as the UN and other humanitarian organizations, is this exposing their actual power? These organizations were set after times of war to promote peace and maintain peace within the nations, between nations, and they've basically failed multiple times. But this is like the biggest failure, I would say, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, you have people right now asking if these institutions are of any use, um, because what has the UN done in terms of putting a stop to the killing in Gaza? What has any international multilateral institution in the world that is set up has been able to do to put a stop to this? But I think what's also more dangerous is the fact that I think what Israel has done in Gaza and the kind of the silence, the complicity of nations across the world has also signaled this message where in the future, what if there are other nefarious actors who want to commit war crimes, who want to commit these kind of killings? They're going to know that they're going to be able to do it with impunity because they have seen this example unfold in Gaza.
Yeah,
So,
they've set precedent.
yeah, exactly. But back to your question, there are people who are they're still for the UN, but there's a genuine question now, people asking, what
Mhm.
is the use of these institutions if they have been completely unable to not even put an end to pass a resolution? How many times has the US shot down Security Council resolutions about ceasefires in Gaza and about different things related to the Palestinian people in Gaza and beyond? There are real questions to
It's
be asked here.
it's definitely insane to think about like the power of the US to be able to just consistently stop any action that is against Israel within the region. And what's even more scary is that they can extend their range to past, like even further than Gaza. They're I don't know if you saw what like the other, like 2 days ago the UNIFIL confirmed that now they're building a wall across the blue line into Lebanon. So they're crossing the what's it called, the demilitarized zone. And I mean,
Tell me more about
what's
this because the last I saw, I think the UNIFIL said something along the lines of they have I guess lost members. Israel killed members recently, or they were shot at, or I briefly read the headline related to
So
UNIFIL
about UNIFIL
today.
itself, I don't know
Okay,
if they lost members or they were attacked. What I know is that Israel conducted a strike on the Lebanese borders, or near the Lebanese borders, and they did kill and injure Lebanese people. I forgot if the casualties were around, like, I think 24 injured and 12 killed, something like that. The numbers I can't confirm. But then I saw later on they were talking about rumors. There was a few like posts about the, the Israel building a wall across the blue line. At first, some news articles were debunking it, but then L'Orient today confirmed it, and then even Middle East Eye and Al Jazeera confirmed it, that UNIFIL soldiers saw the wall being built across the blue line, and they confirmed its positioning, and it's like, and that they started building it, and there's pictures of it. Um, so like this is something that definitely people already in the south of Lebanon are afraid of. That Israel is now without the presence of Hezbollah to resist them, that Israel can just walk in, and the Lebanese military isn't necessarily doing much. So like this is a constant discussion that happens in Lebanon. Like, what if we're the next target? Because like
Mm.
that it's like they have free roam in the region.
I think a lot of people across the region are asking this question: is because how many countries did Israel strike just this year?
Yeah, it's a
What,
lot.
Iran, uh, Gaza,
Syria,
Syria,
Gaza, Lebanon,
Lebanon, Tunisia with the flotilla,
yeah,
um,
Qatar.
I- Qatar, yeah.
I mean,
So
that was like
six or seven countries.
Qatar was out of nowhere as well. Like that's you have an American base over there. That's not supposed to happen. Qatar is supposed to be a neutral territory. They're supposed to be like, in my mind, I see Qatar a bit of like Switzerland of the Middle East, just because of like politically, but not necessarily Switzerland, but you get the picture. Like, they're not supposed to
But
have being attacked by Israel. That doesn't make sense.
that's the thing, is that people across the region are asking the question that you're asking, is that are we going to be next? Or is Israel going
Yeah.
to strike? If Israel can strike this many countries across the region,
Hmm.
is anyone safe really, or is anyone immune from Israeli attacks? I think that is what you have had a lot of people kind of voicing these concerns.
100%. I mean, and there isn't an actual answer to, finding a solution to this, because like, what organization would be able to actually stand against, foreign armies? Because even if the UN had its own army, for example, let's just say the UN has its own army, who's going to be the personnel of that army? Like, they're all going to be coming from different nations, and they're going to be mixed troops. Some of them are going to be Americans, some of them are going to be Europeans, and obviously these troops are not
Yeah, but
necessarily going to be
but we've
on the
had
line.
precedent of peacekeeping efforts from before, have we not? Like I remember, like
We
I think Kosovo's one for sure.
Yeah, of course, we've had peacekeepers, but for the majority of the time, I never necessarily have heard of like success stories with peacekeepers. It's more of just like the peacekeepers are there like, in the demilitarized zone. They stand there, and then no one messes with them. That's it. Just
Hmm.
because if anyone attacks them, then they might, get an attack from the host nation of those troops. But for example, in Lebanon, if there is an attack or something like that happens, they're usually pulled out. I mean, what's what's the point of a peacekeeper if you're not actually keeping the peace? Because we're still getting attacks. They're crossing the border. Where were they when the Israeli army just passed into Lebanon like last year?
Hmm.
I don't understand the concept of peacekeepers at this point,
Yeah.
because they they're not holding their end of the bargain, I would say.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it's a
Which
bit of a bleak
it
image, but like, please, but prove
no,
me wrong.
it takes listen, I don't have the solution, if that's what you're looking for. Man's like, it's bleak. Show me the light. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I think it just goes back to holding Israel to account, and whether the international
Mm.
community will ever be able to do that. I think it's just that is the question that so many around the world are grappling with. But yeah, like
I mean,
beyond that, I don't have
even if
an
we want to
answer.
take other examples, like, even if we want to take other examples like Rwanda, the genocide still happened. It's like,
Mm,
you know,
mm.
uh, I'm sorry, but like this just
And
drives that idea.
There's Sudan happening right
And
now,
Sudan,
which is,
exactly.
being called the forgotten genocide.
Yes, exactly. It is so hard to like to at this point. It's actually so hard to keep following up all of the information that you're getting fed about all of these different attacks. The fact that there's multiple genocides happening at the same time, like, how are you as an individual mentally supposed to be able to process all of this information and just stay sane at the same time, other than while also dealing with your own personal life? Like, excuse my language, but holy fucking shit, man. That's too much. It's a lot.
I mean, look, man, I wouldn't want to give it more than I believe it requires. I mean, when you're talking to people who have lost, dozens of their family members, who have
Yeah.
witnessed the amount of killing, who have lost their relatives, their best friends, their family, your life pales in comparison. Your whatever issue you have, whatever problem you have, it honestly pales in comparison.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is not easy to process this stuff on a daily basis, but when you are working with people and talking to people who have this is their lived experience, literally have nothing to be. You look at yourself in the mirror like, what am I even complaining about? This is ridiculous. But not to
Hmm.
say or not to belittle that this doesn't have a mental health toll. Of course it does. Of course it does. When you're looking at videos of babies being pulled out of the rubble, or young children, or mothers crying, or fathers crying, there's so much that we can talk about. Obviously,
Yeah.
this is going to lay on your psyche and it's going to affect you. But at the end of the day, you are fortunate enough where you have food on your table, you have access to whether it's mental health professionals or whatever it is that you need to do in order to
Mhm.
keep your game in check, whether that would be going to therapy, or whether it's going to going doing physical training or the gym or whatever it is, or eating better, sleeping better. You do what you need to do. But I can't be sitting here being like, oh man, just reading these headlines is driving me crazy. And I'm not belittling it. Of course, it has driven so many people to the brink, and it's pushed a lot of people, and it broke so many of us. I am
Yeah.
not in any way trying to belittle the mental health effects of the genocide. I just
Mhm.
don't think, me personally, I'm someone that's going to give it too much breathing space, where it's just like, yeah, man, like, oh, this really hurt me. Like, you do what you need to do, whether it's going to therapy, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's eating better, whether it's kind of sleeping better, because that is a luxury that, not a lot of people have when you're looking at these areas of the world and you are talking to the people that live there.
Hmm.
That's a beautiful way to paint it, to be honest. And thank you for sharing that.
It must be like incredibly difficult when you're doing interviews and podcasts with like Alana Hadid, right? She like broke down crying about her grandparents' story to you, and
Yeah.
you want to get that story out, but at the same time, you know how much like she's feeling that pain and hurt.
Yeah, of course. Alana and others as well. You just kind of have to approach it with the headspace that you really need to just be wary of how you word your questions, of how you carry yourself, of how. Because the thing is, with these guests, Alana, who was a great, honestly, it was one of my favorite interviews, but also others, whether they had just gotten out of Gaza, or whatever situation may be. Um, the fact that they are giving you their time, and the fact that they are coming to you to share their story, they're about to put a piece of themselves on the table, and that comes with its own weight. Whether everybody processes their own experiences differently, but it all comes with a certain weight, and you just have to be delicate when you approach these topics. So you don't come in being like, oh, I want this X person to cry, or I want that because it's going to make a great reel or whatever. No, you want to make sure that you get the right story, you get the right. You basically provide the guests the right atmosphere, the right space for them to kind of divulge and give you this piece of their own lived experience, in order for you to shine a light on it through your outlet. But at the same time, you want to honor that experience. You want to make sure that because they're giving you that part of their story, you want to
Hmm.
deal with it in the most delicate way.
Do you mind
Yeah.
if we go into more depth like, if you could give us like an example where how you did the setup and how you got the story, and how you're able to deal with it at the same time? Because obviously receiving the story and then like reacting in the right professional manner is also like a multi-layered thing as you're doing it as a presenter.
Sure. But which are you referring to? Any story? Are you referring to a particular story?
The one that comes to your mind, like the one you're willing to share.
Um, there are honestly, there's been a lot. Like, look, the one that comes to mind now is Wa'il al-Dahdur.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that was probably one of the most difficult things I've done.
And he's from
Uh,
Gaza. His
He's
family
from
members have
he's
died.
yeah, the Al Jazeera
He's a
Gaza bureau
journalist.
chief. Yeah, he's a veteran. He's not just a journalist, like he's a veteran reporter. And he's the Al Jazeera Gaza bureau chief. He lost members of his family on several occasions. He lost his wife. He lost his two of his sons. He lost his grands. Like he lost children. He lost his wife. He lost family members, cousins, grandson. Like this is a person that endured so much and yet was so determined to keep the conversation going, to keep the coverage, to make sure that the coverage continues until he was unable to do that and had to leave Gaza in the end. And then there you are, he's sitting in front of you, and you're supposed to be like asking him questions. It was an extremely difficult conversation for me, especially because of the stories that he was sharing. And so at least for me, is that I really wanted to approach it in a way that, I don't want this to be. I don't want to. This guy has endured so much. I don't want to give him any more pain. I don't want to be like, tell me, like you just got to approach the questions with a little bit of like humility and delicacy, because I feel so much for what he's been through, and you don't in a way you don't want to make him relive it, but you also want to hear the story because it's important for the audiences to listen to it, especially the ones who don't know him, or because he's an Arabic speaker, he doesn't speak English. You want to make sure that whatever he says, you carry it to an English-speaking audience in an effective manner. So it was a very difficult conversation to navigate, to be honest with you. Especially, you know what? Especially because of the way this is a man that I feel like puts so many journalists to shame, Western journalists, non-Western journalists, just so many journalists, period, to shame, because everything I just listed,
his sacrifice,
everything that he lost, like I talked about the family members, but they bombed his house. They like, this man lost everything in Gaza. So much of what he had, he lost, not including the fact that this was his home. Gaza's his home, and he was basically faced with a decision that he just had to leave. And I'm sure that was not an easy decision at all. But when you listen to him speak, and this is me going back to why I say he puts so many to shame, the way he talks about what he went through and the losses that he experienced and what he endured, he is still speaking to you with the objectivity of a journalist. He is not adding any kind of unnecessary or redundant emotion, even though he has every right to, be as emotional as he wants to. But he is telling it to you like it is, even though that he's the victim. He's the one that this has all happened to. But he is such a journalist to the point where even when he's reporting on his own family story, he's reporting it like a journalist.
Wow.
And I think that is the lesson that we take from someone of his caliber. Like, honestly, I was just sitting there in awe of what this man was saying. And he said a lot, but like one of the things that I took in from the conversation was like, you don't, especially when it comes to the genocide in Gaza, you only need to be a journalist to show the world what's happening. You don't need to bring in unnecessary factors. You just have to be a journalist because the story tells itself. There are people being killed. There are people being bombed, and this is the result of what's happening. That's it. You just got to turn on the camera, you turn on the mic, and you go talk to the people, or you just go show, the aftermath of what happened here when they just bombed this place, or they bombed this hospital, they bombed this neighborhood, whatever it is. You just go and you report. And he was like, that is all that you needed to do. You just be a journalist. And so taking all of that in was an experience for me.
Wow.
It's I think it's definitely an experience for us as well. Hearing your perspective of it, just like you explaining it to us was like that was emotional to process. And this is like the secondhand story as well, and so it just goes to show like how intense that conversation was as well. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to uh, share that.
That was a great question, Saeed, and it's a lot of responsibility being part of Middle East Eye, right? I mean, a lot of people are watching your interviews because they want to know what's happening and they want the full story, not things sugar coated. I mean, what kind of responsibility comes with that kind of influence?
I think the the responsibility of any journalist that works for any media outlet. I don't think it's we hold. I think the outlet holds itself to the highest professional standards, and I think that's what we all do. And like I said in the beginning, this is an incredible team of journalists. They're incredibly intelligent. They're very principled. They're punching above their weight. They're the hardest workers. So I think even being in that environment alone is enough to push anybody forward and to try to make sure that they are on their best professional behavior, and to just be a journalist and just kind of go and get the story and react with it as necessary, deal with it as necessary.
And that, like you did, was this something you wanted to do when you were a kid? Did you ever imagine yourself in this kind of position? Is this something you wanted, or did you just fall into it?
No, I didn't fall into it. You know what's funny? There was a point where I in high school, I remember it was either going into like it was either I wanted to become a lawyer or a journalist, but journalist was definitely on like it was definitely something that I thought deeply about. And so, as a uh, I I ended up disappointing my mom and taking journalism, uh, not law.
Well, I hope you're making
Uh,
her proud right now with all the awesome work you're
no,
doing.
I'm okay. Thank you. That means a lot.
Hmm.
But like, no, I don't know if I imagine myself to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I think I've always known that I loved conversations. I've always known that I loved sitting down with people and having intimate kind of personal conversations. I think that is something that I was always confident about, and I still am. Um, However format this takes or whatever look it has is, that's different. But like, I've always known that I absolutely love sitting down with someone and just kind of getting their story out, or getting something interesting out of them, or hearing a perspective that I might not have heard before. So not necessarily debating someone, or not necessarily getting into some fight over a particular topic. It's more of just actually having the person in front of you to be in their comfort zone,
Hmm.
and having them kind of giving you a piece of themselves, and then taking that and making a conversation out of it. I think that is something that I've always been confident about in terms of what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I think what Real Talk has done is that it's given me that space, in a way. Obviously, and a lot of the time it dealt with tragedy and devastation and killing, when in reference to genocide. But there has been other circumstances as well where you are still able to kind of bring out something different and bring out something unique. And that is what I hope that I continue to do, because honestly, it's the fire that keeps me. It's the motivator for me.
You put yourself in like some vulnerable positions too, being so open with your questions and your thought process, and having the guests be so vulnerable with you. And
Yeah.
it's an art form, and you've mastered it. You're doing your interviews are so eye opening, and because of that, not all interviews are the same. Trust me. So, like you as an interviewer, you've been able to do so much, and there's a lot of pressure. I mean, have you ever faced any pushback from talking about these delicate topics?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the enough compliments, Ali. Leave me and my ego alone. Leave me and my ego alone. Um,
No promises.
no, no, I appreciate it, sir. But in terms of pushback, not. Not that I can think of on the spot, to be honest. I think for the most part, because I try my best to always have like icebreakers with the guests. So before the
Hmm.
interview starts, we kind of just sit down and talk, or we try to do if the case, or I don't do a lot of pre-interviews, but it's happened one or two times, and if that happens, it also gives some sort of icebreaker between you and the guests. But honestly, no, I think a lot, so many of the guests, if not all the guests, have been incredible in their own way, and they've kind of, sometimes you just get guests that the topic is the I guess is the real guest in the
Hmm.
conversation. So sometimes you get a guest who's not going to come here and tell you about what happened to them when they were 17, and like this is not the kind of conversation they're here for.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But the topic is what we're both after. So we kind of get the same, I guess, weight in terms of adding value to the conversation through their background in relation to the topic that we're talking about. So not every conversation that I have is like super personal or super deep, or obviously when I do, it's great. But when it's not, you still come out with something that is valuable. Like I actually, the conversation that we're having about the UN,
Hmm.
it was a conversation that I had with Jeffrey Sachs.
Right.
And it was like I had like what 30 or 32 minutes with Jeffrey Sachs or something, and I'm not gonna sit there and he's not someone that's used to these kind of conversations. I think it's something that you would probably have to kind of um, just kind of have long pre-conversations about beforehand. But it was in relation to whether has Gaza made the UN relevant, and so I think that on its own was an important topic. So other than that, I don't think there has been um, pushback to what
Hmm.
you were asking. Yeah.
And then like we're on YouTube and we've been labeled as misinformation a couple times, and we've had some pushback just about talking about things that is not misinformation. We're talking about information and truths. With a platform like Middle East Eye, that's a much larger platform. Do you ever feel like you need to choose the words you're saying um, in order to, yeah, be careful?
No, no,
No.
it's you're just like you hold yourself to the same standards that any professional media outlet would hold itself to. I don't think there's any fear of you know what you're reporting. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing more beyond that.
And then for you, is like what
Mm.
you're doing journalism or activism? What's the line between it? We also ask ourselves these questions too, because me and Sai, we talk about these topics a lot, but it's partially because we're so passionate about it and we want to be part of the change. Do you feel like you've crossed the line from journalist to activist?
No, 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 no. I am definitely a journalist first and foremost. See, I don't like this. I get where you're coming from, but I don't. I think you would only deal with. And I think this is kind of the area we're in when it comes to Israel Palestine, is that when people talk about Palestinian issues or they're talking about issues related to the region, I think people on the especially people who are not from the region or people in the West or whatever it is, they immediately look at it from the prism of activism as opposed to
Hmm.
journalism. I wouldn't. There's nothing in what I'm doing that I believe is activism at all. I am sitting down and having conversations with people to share their stories. Some of them have endured so many different tragedies, and we are taking these stories and showing them to the world. There's nothing activisty about what I'm doing. And it takes me back to what Dahdu has been saying, is that the example that he's been setting is that this is all you need to do. You don't need to add any more spices. You just got to be a reporter. You just got to be a journalist. And I feel like at the end of the day, this is what my role is. My role is to sit down with you and have a conversation and kind of put it out to the world. There's nothing more that I need to bring than what this already holds. So yeah, I don't think the activism thing would extend to to other topics. And I get it. It's because it's speaking out in relation to Palestine, but also anything related to the Middle East has become so contested, and it becomes so debated, and it just becomes such a hot topic that when people look at it, it's like, oh, you're out there, being an activist with your billboards and your posters and whatever it is. And it's like, no, you're just being a journalist at the end of the day.
They kind of force you into that box a bit because of the whole conflict, and it's turned into a debate when it should be just like you sharing information about the truth and the stories that you're hearing. And yeah, from your experience, what story about Gaza would like open people's eyes and change people's minds?
I mean, story, like, come on, it's just I wouldn't even dare to say one story. I think Gaza, and there are stories coming out every day. But to make this easier on you, because I'm not here to give you a hard time. I did catch the film The Voice of enrages the other day.
Yes. Fantastic cinema masterpiece. And
have you guys seen it? Like,
yes, I've seen it. I don't think I've had the chance to see it. So yes, let's talk about it a bit. Sorry, Said, about the spoilers, but it's a true story. We all know the story of what happened to young.
Yeah. Took off his headphones. It's okay, man. You're in Lebanon. The electricity will cut out soon.
Nice one.
It's okay. I'm okay with spoilers. No worries.
Yeah, but not only is The Voice of enrages like an incredible true story, but the way they made the film is such a like cinematic masterpiece, and the way that they blended documentary with fiction storytelling, and all the actors are phenomenal. They really depict what it's like to be in the Red Crescent during the call centers and trying to help people out. And it's incredible the lengths that all these people went to just save one person, this young hen. When there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, you can't imagine the scale of the amount of suffering and the stories that we don't even know about. But do you think The Voice of enrages, the movie coming out, is able to make some kind of change with the awareness that it brings?
I hope it does. I mean, GQ, the British GQ has already called it, if I'm not mistaken, they've called it the most powerful or the most important film of the year. I agree with that. I think this film has to be an essential watch. I think everybody should watch it. I'm not even a fan of films that really put you in a particular psychological, emotional state. Like, even though I love going to the cinema, but these are kind of the movies that I flock towards. So I was like fidgeting in my seat as I was watching it, but it is such an important watch. And there is something to, I guess, turning this into an art project of sorts, that really puts things in perspective. It's like showing you things that you might not even think about. And the story is horrific as it is. The 5 or 6 year old girl stuck in her car with her relatives dead around her because they just got killed by Israeli bullets. Is just, I mean, there's nothing more to say, right? And then she's on the phone with these paramedics, the Palestine Red Crescent call center in Ramallah for like 70, 80 minutes, asking them to come save her. And then she gets killed in the end. It's just, the story is already hard enough to fathom. But I think seeing it on the big screen is even more difficult, because it just puts you right in that scene. It just puts you right in that environment. I think the cast has done an incredible job. I was just actually at the opening night here in London the other day, and had the chance to speak to them. Again, they themselves have been grappling with a lot of, because it's very, like, you want, obviously, and from their perspective, they want this film to do well and they want everybody to see it and stuff. But also, how do you celebrate success when it's talking about such a tragedy, right? So the actors themselves are grappling with it. It's not like, from what I have seen, it's not like an easy walk for them to be doing this press tour. But yeah, man, like back to again your question, this like your question about whether this is a film or there is a story from Gaza that I think is worth highlighting. Obviously, every story from Gaza is worth highlighting. Um, but this is something that's just going to leave you enraged throughout, because we're talking about a 6-year-old girl and people that are trying to save her, and the paramedics that were on the way, got killed. And how do you, I don't know, you don't grapple with something like that. But I think there's another really important thing that this film touches on that I think not a lot of people are familiar with or know, which is the whole thing about coordination, right?
Mm-hmm.
The green light, the fact that they were
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the green light, and the fact that they were, and Saeed, to give you a breakdown, there is a point in the film where, actually, it's kind of throughout the whole film, but it's you have two characters in this movie. It's Omar and it's Mehdi. And Omar is the guy who answers the phone and he hears him for the first time, and Mehdi is his boss. Omar obviously wants to go through any means necessary to save Hind, whereas his boss, Mehdi, is telling him to calm down because he needs to get the proper approvals. Now, this whole thing about approvals and coordination is about Kogat, which is an Israeli military division that deals with administrative affairs in occupied Palestine. And so the role of Kogat in this particular scenario is you're supposed to, from the Palestinian side, you're supposed to tell it, we're about to send this ambulance to save this girl, and you need to give us the green light, because if they don't give it the green light, then the Israeli army can basically bomb the paramedics or the ambulance or whatever it is. Now, the process of coordinating this green light scenario, going from the Palestinian Red Crescent to the Palestinian Health Ministry to whatever else, how many other avenues it needs to go to Kogat, and then Kogat has to speak to whatever Israeli military division they need to speak to, and then it's such just this huge circle of unnecessary bureaucracy just so you can get an ambulance to save a Palestinian child. And so I don't think a lot of people understand what these intricate details of the lives of Palestinians in
Mm-hmm.
Gaza entail, right? When it comes to getting an ambulance. I mean, if they're even able to reach an ambulance, but like it just so many things are required when it comes to coordination and things of that nature that I don't think even people understand. And I think that's why it's such an important film for people to go and watch, because it really puts it right in front of you. It really shows it to you in a way that's like, oh wow, this you can't like, because in your mind you're probably just like, okay, they called the Red Crescent, so the Red Crescent is just going to share their location, and then they're going to send the ambulance, and then the ambulance will save the girl, right? Like, no, it's nothing like that. Everything has to be coordinated. And I'm not going to say anymore, but like, the point is, even when that coordination happens, they still get killed. Do you know what I mean?
So what does that
And
tell you?
that's why you're left enraged. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
that is like honestly, that whole experience was the movie experience was just something else for me, because I was sitting there in the theater and like everybody around me was like
Mm-hmm.
quietly sobbing. You can just hear the people just barely breathing as they're wiping their tears. And when the credits rolled, not one person got up. Not one person got out of their seat. Everybody was seated and they watched the entire credits roll, just the whole sequence, right until the very end, until there was no more credits. And then everybody just silently got up and left the hall. Not saying a word. I didn't hear a peep. I didn't hear a word as we're all leaving. And it was just the weight of that. And then you take that the movie, you take it and you think about it, and then you realize how many of these stories didn't make it to social media. How many of these stories exist? How many of these stories have we not even heard about?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much for you to kind of grapple with at the end of the day.
On the theme of like them asking for permission for things before doing the action, it just reminds me a bit of our journey talking about Palestine. You know, we've had people during Sheikh Jarrah, Palestinian journalists, this was years ago, talk about this conflict. And but yeah, ever since the genocide started in October 2023, we kind of, at the beginning, we were a bit reserved. I thought for myself too, but to have these conversations, I don't know why we were a bit scared because of the pushback, and you're hearing a lot of people getting canceled because of it, especially in the early days. And yeah, it was nerve wracking, you know, to talk about these topics, and we avoided it for a little bit, but then eventually we just got like so fed up with it that we started having people on, and now we've had many Palestinian journalists on the pod and people to talk about this topic. And we've grown a lot. Like, we've had a massive change in terms of our approach to talking about this topic. And for me, that's just, you know, like, and you know, living in Los Angeles and in the US, like, I've experienced some Islamophobia and some you know, like, people trying to put me down because of my religion or where I'm from. And but this experience took me on a journey where it made me, like, proud of where I'm from. You know, like, before, when I first moved to the US, I was trying to, like, distance myself from my heritage or try to fit in here, and I was a bit ashamed of where I came from. But then something about
I mean,
the
I don't
Palestinian
think
journey
you're
made me
alone. I don't
proud.
think you're alone in that, Ali. I don't think you know, the fact that you were trying to distance yourself from your own heritage. I don't. I think that's the experience of so many people from our shared backgrounds. And it was just because we grew up in an environment where we were made to believe that our own culture, our own heritage, is something to be ashamed of, and it's something that we shouldn't kind of lean into and be aligned with, because somehow it's degrading to not just us but to others around us. So yeah, I I don't think you're the only one who felt the same way.
Yeah. And honestly, because of social media too, and they're hearing about all these people, you know, sharing their experiences. I know I'm not alone in this, and that's why I wanted to share it too. But
Mm.
yeah, social media has had a massive effect on how I see myself and my own identity too. Like, I'm not sure, like, without it, what, or like alternative media too, you know, has had me really reshape my perspectives and um thought processes. And what would the genocide be without social media? Like, even in the film, you know, they're trying to capture all these things and trying to broadcast it on social media because they think it can help. But and it does help in a way. I mean, social media has really changed the way we view this whole um
Yeah, I think it's one of the
Palestinian.
main factors that's changed young people's minds, and I think that's why you had a lot of politicians. Remember when there was this conversation between Mitt Romney and the former Secretary of State under Biden, Blinken. That was his name. I forgot his name. There was a conversation between Mitt Romney and Blinken where they were talking about TikTok and the influence of TikTok, and I think there is a reason why you had so many in the political class, especially in the United States, other Western countries too, but especially in the United States, being very concerned about what young people have been consuming on social media, is because they have been getting what's been happening in Gaza unfiltered, right? It's been, and that is one of the main factors that's shifted a lot of people's minds in terms of how they view Israel Palestine and how they view the Palestinian people and how they view Gaza, is because they have been getting the videos that the Palestinian journalists on the ground have been taking straight to their phone. You know, they didn't need to go through a middleman, or a traditional, legacy media outlet
Mm-hmm.
to tell them that this is what's happening. They have been seeing that, and they have also seen the disconnect between what they have been getting to on their feed and also the kind of news that they're consuming from the outlets that they usually subscribe to. So yes, social media has been crucial because it was the tool that these Palestinian journalists were using in order to directly inform the world of what's happening. And that is why you saw a big surge in terms of engagement and in terms of followers that a lot of these Palestinian journalists
Mm-hmm.
ended up gaining on, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok, whatever it was, or X, because the viewers and consumers knew that if they wanted to know what's going on in Gaza, they are much better suited to just follow these journalists instead of going through other outlets.
Do you think that the truth matters, like people knowing about what happens in the with Palestine? Do you think the us being aware of it changes anything on the ground for them?
On the again, that is not a question that I can directly answer, but I think it has definitely changed the way that young voters think, and we've seen it in the United States. And it takes me back to what I was saying about the disconnect between the political
Mm-hmm.
class and the younger demographic. I definitely think it's had an influence. It may not have had a direct role in ending things on the ground, but it's had somewhat of an effect in terms of the political situation in these countries, like in the United States. Somewhat of an effect. I'm not saying like a total effect, but
Mm-hmm.
it has had an effect in terms of how people voted in just the most recent elections, and it's played a role, not the only role, but a role in Mamdani's win as well. So there are effects. It might not be leading to change directly on the ground for Palestinians in Gaza, but I think it has been, in a way, forced politicians to pay attention to the situation a lot more and not be, try to maneuver the usual political playbook that they have been using for however many decades.
Mm-hmm. Here's why I disagree with you a little bit on the social
Hmm.
media thing. I think because they're trying to control it so much. If you notice, like Zionist energies, they're trying to control media, social media, YouTube, podcasts. Why do you think Netanyahu's going on podcasts and um, if he doesn't think it's so important, right? Like if he doesn't think podcasting is such a thing that can make or break their project.
They're also
I
paying
think
influencers as
No,
well.
I
so
think
important.
Netanyahu went on the podcast because he knows that young people are consuming podcasts. I don't think it's anything more than that. Actually, if anything, I think Netanyahu went on that podcast in a way to play damage control.
Mm.
I think his team, whoever runs anything related to media from his side, thought that it'd be a good idea for him to go on a popular podcast that is popular in America with young people in order to kind of reach hopefully young MAGA voters or others in America, to try to tell them that what they're seeing on their newsfeed is complete, lies and everything, all the misinformation that he spread on that podcast, and then also do the bit about the Burger King and stuff. But if anything, we also saw the backlash that the
Mm-hmm.
Nelk boys um, got in return. They actually the following interview, they had to do with Bassem Youssef, where he gave them like a 2-hour lecture on what is going on and how Netanyahu actually used them as puppets in a way to kind of get his messaging across. And I'm sure you guys saw when Hassan Piker gave them a big, like he had them on his show as well and gave them a whole spiel about what he thought. But I don't. I still think what I think. Even if there's something to be said about all these billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and all of these billionaires that control and own a lot of the social media platforms. At the end of the day, this is where we were receiving all of these videos. This is where our feed, yes, there were
Hmm.
a lot of instances where people got shadow banned, where people got blocked, people were unable to post, videos were deleted. Yes, I'm not saying that that hasn't happened and censorship hasn't occurred. But at the end of the day, it was still the effective medium where people got to see these videos directly, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's X, like it's still on there. You can still go and see Palestinian journalists posting on their profiles. I think the Netanyahu aspect was more damage control for his part.
Hmm.
So do you say that if anything, Israel is actually losing on the social media side from what we've seen there, and if anything, the truth is actually being shared through social media, and it is being processed and accepted, and it has having an effect on the people, especially in the West. Is that seems like the case to like that seems like it is the current case at the moment. You know that the truth is being spread, and it's like you said, it's unfiltered and it's raw footage, untampered with, which is it might be a bit strong to watch in the beginning and hard to process at first because it's definitely not something that you know people in the West are potentially used to seeing on a day-to-day basis. But maybe that's what they should see. Maybe that is what they should see. Maybe that is what wakes them up, what gives them the awareness on what's actually happening, and that's gives them a compelling story to help shift the narrative to what it is right now.
Yeah, I do think that that's what it's done. I do think it's helped shape, shift the narrative in a way, and I do think it's had an effect on how younger demographics, specifically in the United States, but also in other countries, including the United Kingdom, where I am, where younger people have started to look at this from a different lens because of the reporting of Palestinian
Yeah.
journalists on social media.
To go, I think this will be my final question, but to go, long-term vision. Do you think this would actually also influence the political class in the future? Because the way the youth is now, receiving this information, and now how their perspective has changed compared to, their parents or their grandparents. Do you think the way the voting is going to happen, or maybe the people who are in power, uh, there's going to be a massive shift in that situation?
I don't know if there will be a massive shift. I don't even think I'm the person to be making that call. Um, I do think it will be interesting to see how this generation and future generations shape the political system in their respective countries in the years to come. I do think it will be very interesting to see what the younger generation that has kind of built its own view based on the reporting that's come out of Gaza, and have used it to voice their opposition to their governments, to protest, to call for a different way forward, to see how they will have an influence as obviously, older generations kind of die off or no longer are voting or whatever it is, and more generations are coming in. It will be interesting to see how how these Western governments will look like, and how voting is going to be, who's going to be voted in, and what kind of politicians we're going to have, what kind of governments we're going to. I think it will be interesting to see.
Right.
I do think it will have a much longer effect than just these 2 3 years that we're living through. I think it will be definitely longer than what we're seeing right now.
what what would you like to focus on? Once Palestine is in peace, what topics would you like to highlight more on Real Talk?
I mean, look, it's we cover a range of things. It's not only Palestine related. I think, like I said at the beginning, it was just more focused on Gaza because it was the biggest news and the biggest moral issue, the biggest news story, like in the world at the moment. So it needed the attention, and as much attention
Yeah.
as you can give it. But no, I think there's a lot of important stories to cover. I think I want to be covering Sudan soon. I want to be looking at what's happening there. I don't think enough people are talking about it, and I think that's also an important conversation. But at the same time, because the situation in Gaza and again in the West Bank, it's just the plight of the Palestinians. It's not ending. So it is a conversation that needs to continue at the end of the day. So I can't look at it in the sense of like, okay, on to the next one. It's just you just have your hand in multiple jars and you try your best to kind of keep up with everything that's going on.
Yeah, speaking of jars, you wouldn't consider taking a break and maybe just like doing a food blog or something like that, trying different cookies. I don't know.
Cookie, I would love that. Listen, I would love to just kind of have a diverse range of content. Trust me, there's nothing that I'm very open to whatever new idea. If you want, if we all get together and do a cooking show in LA, I'm there for it.
Yalla,
Let's do it. Yeah, I can't wait for that day to come. Saeed?
Ahmed, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It's been an amazing conversation to have with you. I keep doing what you're doing, man. Seriously, the insight that you're sharing, the stories that you're giving to the world, that you're letting people hear, it's definitely helpful. And you said you weren't a heavy hitter, but man, this convo was definitely a heavy hitter for us.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you again for coming on. And this is how we sign out. We salute to cover the camera, and peace, guys.
We're out of here. Thank you.
Oh, is that what you do? Is that what you do?
Yeah.
And that's how we end it.